At number 10 spot, we have the Phantom Hitchhiker of Black Horse Lake. Near the city of Great Falls in Cascade County is a tale about a very notorious yet mysterious hitchhiker. If you happen to be coming off of Highway 87 going down Fort Benton, you may encounter a man on the side of the road at night. The area is very flat, so the man is very easy to spot when you're driving down this road. But unlike other people on the side of the roads, this person isn't looking to get a ride. Instead, once your car gets closer, the person is reported to roll over the hood of your car, across the windshield of the vehicle, as if they had been struck. As people begin to check on the man after they hit, they realize that they had hit nothing and the person they previously saw just disappeared. Over the years, there have been hundreds of reports that claim the same thing. They drive on this road, then they hit a man, only to find out it was nothing. Many believe this is a spirit of a Native American man who got struck and killed on this road. However, there's still no written document on it. At number 9 spot, we have Sacrifice Cliff. Overlooking Billings, Montana is Sacrifice Cliff. Despite the breathtaking views and scenic paths, this place has a very dark history attached to it. I mean, you probably already know that just by the name alone. Story goes that this cliff was once a peaceful meditation spot for the men of the Crow tribe. When they arrived here, they would be in complete silence, which showed the amount of respect they had for the area. However, a smallpox outbreak hit the area, causing the majority of the Crow tribe to perish within days. So one day, some of the boys returned to their homes from Sacrifice Cliff, only to discover that their entire village, including their family members, had all passed away from smallpox. They were so distraught they didn't see a point in living, so the boys decided to sacrifice themselves over this cliff. They would return back to the cliff with their horses, then they would proceed to blindfold the horse and then ride off these very cliffs to their deaths. Although this is a very sad tale, if you decide to visit this place at night, you may hear the sound of these horses as if they're falling from the cliff to this day. At number 8 spot, we have Flathead Lake Monster. Lurking in Flathead Lake is said to be a monster that closely resembles the Loch Ness Monster. But hey, I swear every place has their own version of it, so here's Montana's version. For those who don't know, Flathead Lake is situated northeast Montana, just in case you guys want to avoid this place for your next swim. Many visit this lake for its unprecedented beauty, but since 1889, there have been reports coming in the boatloads about this creature. It's described as a very large eel-like creature that moves around like a snake and is as long as 40 feet. Many say its head is shaped like a bowling ball with multiple humps on its back. No wonder people think this is the Loch Ness Monster. It all started in 1889 when James C. Kerr was making rounds across the lake when he and his passengers discovered this creature. They described it as a whale-like from its sheer size alone. Ever since, there's been hundreds of sightings, but who really knows what lies underneath the depths of this lake? At number 7 spot, we have the Alberta Bear Theater. Located in Billings, Montana as well, is the famous Alberta Bear Theater. The theater was originally named the Fox Theater, but in 1987, the theater was renamed the Alberta Bear Theater in honor of his daughter, Alberta. And this 1,400-seat theater was like any other. It was beautiful on the inside, which housed many professional touring companies and various performing artists. However, most visitors and workers claim to see the same two spirits lurking inside of the theater. This includes one male entity and one female. The male is described as wanting to be noticed, out of sorts, and very possessive, while the female is described as being very benign and very friendly. So let's talk about the guy. It's said that he is the spirit of a past employee who took his own life at the theater, which keeps him there trapped for eternity. So if you guys are looking to come to this theater, be on the lookout for these two. At number 6 spot, we have the Garnett Ghost Town in Coloma. Coloma, Montana is known as the Mystery Camp and is a ghost town located a few miles north of the better known Garnett Ghost Town on the Garnett Back County Byway. Very little is known about the Coloma settlement other than records indicating that it began in 1893 and experienced high gold mining activity starting in 1896. But by the 1940s, the mines had completely run out and the boom went bust. Eventually, the place would be emptied out and be left abandoned, and this is where many locals claim that the spirits ended up taking over the place. One state historian claims that once the sun sets in Garnett, the spirits of the town historic's residents come alive. Ellen Baumler, the Montana Historical Society's resident ghost whisperer and author, wrote, quote, "At midnight, people have heard ghostly fingers striking piano keys with the music floating across the empty buildings." She continued saying, quote, "Especially during the winter months, visitors see visions and hear unearthly noises. They cause no trouble, and anyone who visits the deserted town in the dead of winter should be prepared to meet them. They hide in the shadows, laugh in the wind, and come out when you least expect them. Right in the hub of our list, we have Bear Canyon. Mashed in between Chestnut Mountain and Mount Ellis is a beautiful stretch of land known as Bear Canyon. It's best known for its scenic hiking trail and is one of the most popular sites in the Bozeman area. And as we all know, a place that is beautiful on the outside is usually hiding something very dark on the inside. According to the Bozeman Paranormal Society, Bear Canyon is a place for spirits and not for humans. Sightings of the paranormal have been recorded since the late 1800s, which is ever since we started to settle inside of that piece of land. Many people have reported seeing a little girl who attempts to lead them off of the trail and into the woods. The little girl targets women, and for those who follow this girl, they will find themselves lost in the middle of the canyon. Others claim to have seen a strange mist on Bear Canyon Road, and many have gone missing when they enter inside of this strange mist. Number 4, Moss Mansion. Built in 1903, this red brick mansion was a turn-of-the-century home. It was 3 stories tall with 28 different rooms inside. The mansion was built for the Moss family, who treated it like their pride and their joy. Eventually, they would have around 6 children and 3 servants occupying the home. Years went by and all was good, until they suffered their first devastating loss. Just 5 years after the house was built, the youngest child named Virginia passed away while she was only 6 years old. Then 40 years later, in 1947, the dad, Preston B. Moss, passed away from a heart attack. Then soon after followed the wife, who passed away from a cerebral hemorrhage. Then 30 years later, another one of the sons named Melville passed away in 1984. This family ended up inhabiting the home from 1903 all the way until 1984. So best believe their deaths in the home have some sort of effect. The mansion has now been turned into a museum, and many visitors report various paranormal activity. Some include a ghostly female voice singing in the billiards room, and many staff members report a cool wind that goes up and around their bodies as they walk through the halls of the mansion. At number 3, we have Bannock Ghost Town. When gold was discovered along Grasshopper Creek in Bannock, Montana, the town went from a ghost town to a blooming community. Following the economic growth, a man named Henry Plummer became the sheriff of the town and the leader of a gang known as the Innocents. Plummer's gang is linked to over 100 murders and robberies, and during his brief time as sheriff, Plummer erected the Bannock Gallows, only to be hanged from them himself after being apprehended by a group of vigilantes. Bannock State Park still has the gallows, but many people who have visited claim that there's too much negative energy and supernatural activity in that specific area. Many claim to even see the spirit of Henry Plummer himself, as he's said to be still pleading for his life. At number 2 spot, we have Little Bighorn Battlefield. The Battle of Little Bighorn occurred on 1876 in the grassy plains of Bighorn River Valley and bluffs that exist around and along the Bighorn River. This was where General Custer and his men were brutally and completely defeated by the Sioux and Cheyenne warriors led by Crazy Horse and Sitting Bull. So best believe a place like this has a few restless spirits. I mean, every battlefield has one. You guys should know this. Visitors and employees have reported strange noises and even seeing full-fledged apparitions of soldiers after dark. Now, near the battlefield cemetery is where the most activity is said to happen. Many visitors claim to have been consumed by the feeling of deep sorrow and loss when they walk the cemetery grounds. And the stone house, which was built in 1894 for the cemetery's caretakers, is home to some of the most terrifying ghost stories. Some include lights aggressively flickering on and off until you leave the home, and others report seeing soldiers with missing limbs, such as missing heads or legs, indicating some of the injuries they went through during the war. At number 1 spot, we have Dude Rancher Lodge. Built in 1940 by Annabelle and Percival Goen, the Dude Rancher Lodge was originally constructed using salvaged bricks from the old St. Vincent's Hospital. The couple ran the hotel together until 1962, where Percival passed away after a car accident. Annabelle continued to run the hotel on her own, though slowly her health began to decline. She lived in an apartment at the hotel and was cared for by her dedicated staff until eventually she was moved to a nursing home. Then on February 2nd, 1983, Annabelle passed away. Since her passing, this lodge has had too many supernatural activities to count. This includes televisions turning on and off while the housekeepers are cleaning the room, knocking on the doors when no one is on the other side, the sound of children running in the halls with no children being present, and a mysterious female voice was even caught on audio tape in the basement of the hotel. If you ever wanted to stay here, then try to avoid rooms 223, 224, and especially 226, which is said to be Annabelle's grandson's room, who took his own life in that room. At number 10 spot, we have the Tulsa Hex House. Located on 10 East 21st Street in Oklahoma, is the remnants of a home that was once a horror house. The owner of the home during the 1940s was a 45-year-old woman named Carolyn Smith. However, she wouldn't be the only resident in the home, as she would keep 2 other women there as quote-unquote slaves. These 2 women were named Virginia Evans and Willetta Horner, who were 30 and 31 years old at the time. They claim that they were being hexed by Coraline and were basically forced to give their paychecks directly to her, with their big reward coming when they arrived in the gates of heaven. Basically, Coraline would keep these 2 women in her basement and live off their checks. But that wasn't all. She would also receive aid from one of her slaves' parents, in which she received a total of $20,000 for nursing care. After the 2 women were suspected of missing, a police investigation eventually found them in prison in the home's basement, living in the worst conditions, and this was during a 7-year span. Coraline will only get subjected to 1 year in prison, and the house was demolished with a parking lot built on top of it. However, some believe that the same basement is still underneath the parking lot. At a number 9 spot, we have the mysterious Shamans Portal. There is thought to be a literal portal in the sand dunes of Beaver, Oklahoma, known as Shamans Portal, or Oklahoma's Bermuda Triangle to others. The legend goes that in the 1500s, there was once a Spanish explorer named Coronado who stumbled upon the sand dunes. When he entered, he was warned by all local native tribes about the dangers of exploring the dunes, especially since they would avoid this area for almost centuries. However, as like any other early settler, Coronado didn't listen and instead brought 3 other men with him to explore these dunes. Halfway through their trip, they encountered strange flashes which seemed to look like green lightning. Then 3 men accompanying him died immediately, and Coronado would write about this situation in his journal. Oklahoma State University archaeologist Dr. Mark Thatcher even spent 3 years studying the area until it was shut down by men with military credentials, which matched the description of the Men in Black. So could this place be a spot where potential UFOs could have been, or is this place in fact cursed like the natives say? At number 8 spot, we have the Satanic Purple Church. In the town of Spencer, Oklahoma, there are remains of an old church with stairs leading to a basement known as the Purple Church. Locals claim that this place was used for devil worship and forms of witchcraft and other animal sacrifices. Others even claim that when a full moon coincides with a Saturday, then Satanists will sacrifice virgins here at this church. Apart from that, before you enter, you will be met with various satanic purple pentagrams and different symbols. If you happen to stumble upon the area, don't be surprised to see animal carcasses scattered around, as they were probably used in some type of ritual. The issue about this place is that people have been chased not only by the spirits, but by real men in robes and even the local landowners. So be sure to get permission if you decide to step foot in this haunted place. At a number 7 spot, we have the ghost of the Little Theater. Located in Tulsa, Oklahoma, is a tiny theater which was built in 1932. Although it is very small, it was home to many performances and progressed the entertainment scene in Oklahoma. However, in the 70s and the 80s, the theater would go through many fires which halted production, and some say there were deaths in those fires that were never recorded. Then by 2004, the theater would go through disrepair and many would trespass to leave graffiti and garbage around. Eventually, the theater was fixed back up, but many who would visit claim that it wasn't the same as it used to be. Locals believe that the spirits of former workers and crew still reside inside of the building. Stage performers often report that they are sharing a stage with someone when there is no one else backstage with them. And according to a legend, a director passed away during a performance. So could it be his apparition that appears on stage, or could it just be a piece of our imagination? At a number 6 spot, with the Spook Light Road. Spook Light Road, located in the small town Peoria, is a road in America where you are bound to encounter something you really don't want to. Specifically named East 50th Street, this stretch of road is said to have an unexplained light appearing over the sky in different shapes to different people. Some believe it's supernatural activity, while others believe UFOs. It was such a popular place during the 40s that during World War II, the US Army Corps of Engineers spent weeks in the area with the best technology, but in the end of the day, they had more questions than they had answers. This unexplained light has been debunked on different sources, with claims of a person holding a lantern or even a person on a horse holding a lantern. But from the photos, what do you guys think about this? In the hump of our list, we have the Camscott Girl Scout Massacre. In the year 1977, a horrific tragedy occurred at the Camscott in Mays County, Oklahoma. This is when 3 Girl Scouts aged 8 to 10 were murdered by one psychopath. However, this all could have been prevented if they had listened to a message they had received prior to the killings. This is because weeks before, they had received a message saying, quote, "We are on a mission to kill 3 girls, intent 1. The camp director thought it was an elaborate joke and ended up discarding the letter. After a police investigation, they arrested local jail escapee Jean Leroy Hart, but 2 years later he was released after there was insufficient evidence. Now when people try to walk through this now abandoned camp, they claim to hear the spirits of the 3 girls murdered. However, I personally think that this isn't the worst part. It's the fact that this case was never solved, especially considering in 1989, DNA testing was conducted that showed 3 of the 5 probes matched Hart's DNA. As well, in 2022, authorities made public that DNA evidence strongly suggests Hart's involvement. Regardless, may these girls rest in peace. At a number 4 spot, we have Veterans Lake. Introducing the most haunted lake in the state of Oklahoma, the Veterans Lake. Located in the western portion of Sulphur, Oklahoma, this lake was built to honor American war veterans. However, for many years, many have claimed that this lake is possessed by a woman who had drowned in the lake while trying to save her baby. People think that if you go swimming at night, her spirit will try to grab you and drown you down with her. There has also been stories of apparitions flying over the water, and with some claiming to see the woman's face when looking down at it. People have also reported hearing a woman's voice while boating on the lake crying for aid and requesting that someone save her child from drowning. At number 3 spot, with the Stone Lion Inn. In Guthrie, Oklahoma is the infamous Stone Lion Inn. The 114-year-old inn has a pretty dark history, with some of the guests never checking out of this hotel. And by that, I mean they're still inside. Since the beginning of its construction, every single owner and visitor have reported something strange coming from this home. And this shouldn't be a surprise because in the 1920s, this place was used as a funeral parlor. So best believe more than a few spirits have made its way to this home. Now the current owner of the home has had the property since the 1980s, and they claim that ever since they began reconstruction of the home, the quote-unquote old souls have been woken up and they make their presence known inside of this building. Guests find themselves either being tucked in bed or dragged out of it when they're all alone. When paranormal investigators came in, they found that the bathrooms had high EMF ratings, which also happens to be the spot where many people took their own lives. So if you ever want to visit the most haunted building in Oklahoma, maybe the Stone Lion Inn is your best bet. At a number 2 spot, we have the Scin Hotel. First opening in 1911, this 10-story hotel was an instant hit to many tourists and anyone looking for a nice place to stay for a night. However, once people learned about the dark history attached to this place, many will go on searching for another local hotel. This is because the Scin Hotel has been rumored to be haunted by a lady who passed away the first year it opened up. The story goes that a maid named Effie had a secret affair with the owner, Mr. Scin, but he became extremely paranoid once Effie delivered his baby. So he decided to hide Effie and lock her up in a room on the 10th floor. After days of being locked up, Effie decided to take their baby and jump off the balcony to their deaths. Ever since that tragedy, this hotel has had countless supernatural occurrences. Visitors claim to see the spirit of Effie roaming the halls at night. At a number 1 spot, we have Elephant on LSD. In 1962, researchers from the University of Oklahoma injected a 7-ton bull elephant by the name of Tusco with 297 milligrams of LSD or acid. Lead researcher Jolly West was also involved in the controversial MK Ultra experiment where they tested the use of psychedelics for brainwashing. The goal was trying to induce musk, which is the testosterone-fueled ultra rage that elephant males go into during breeding season. And 5 minutes after the elephant was injected, Tusco would fall to the ground and just start seizing. To make things worse, they injected Tusco with an additional 2,800 milligrams of promazine hydrochloride, an anti-nausea and sedative drug. After an hour of injections, Tusco would eventually pass away. The whole idea was controversial to begin with and shouldn't have ever happened. But what makes this failed experiment interesting is that acid is not supposed to be lethal to animals that size. To prove this, in 1984, a researcher from UCLA administered large doses of acid to 2 other elephants with none of them dying, making others believe that the other drugs they gave Tusco led him to his doom. At number 10 spot, we have the Scin Tom. This is a well-known one across the entire state, so I apologize in advance if I don't do this story justice. But somewhere in Wallen, Tennessee, a young man named Tom was living a very privileged life by many of our standards. He was a very good-looking person, he was funny, and very intellectual. Basically, a giga-chat. Being like this, he attracted many partners, but after every single one, he was just never satisfied. It wasn't until he met a girl from the town over where his whole perspective changed. He admired her beauty over anything and became enticed immediately. But there was one thing he didn't consider. She was already married. And Tom being Tom, he still went after the girl. Eventually, the lady's husband will become aware of this affair and decide to track down Tom to get his ultimate revenge. So one day he followed his wife to Lover's Lane as she was meeting up with Tom, and when the two hugged, the husband came out of nowhere and grabbed Tom from the vehicle and carried him into the woods. When the cops arrived, they found a full suit of human skin hanging from a tree. Now if you go to Lover's Lane, you may catch a glimpse of Tom's horrific skinned body, but that's only if you're unfaithful. At number 9 spot, we have the Pine Haven School. Somewhere in Jamestown, Tennessee, there's an abandoned all-boys school that was the site of many horrific things back in the day. The legend of the school goes that a group of bullies were bugging and taunting another classmate inside of the bathroom. At first, they were just shoving him around and calling him names, but the abuse just didn't stop there and only proceeded to get worse. It was then one of the boys stuck behind him and pushed him straight into the bathroom mirror. After coming into contact with the mirror, he immediately shattered it, causing a shard of glass to cut his neck, killing him within minutes. In an attempt to cover up their actions, they decided to put the body underneath the floor beds underneath the sink of the bathroom. And after that incident, the bullies were caught, but the students of the school said that the boy's spirit never left the bathroom. There were many claims saying that if you went into this boy's bathroom and looked into one of the mirrors, you may catch a glimpse of his bloody apparition staring behind you. In some accounts, people claim to be pushed by an unseeable force when looking into this mirror, but it all doesn't matter now since the school was abandoned in the 90s. At number 8 spot with the Flintville Monster. During the 1970s, a creature described to look like Bigfoot was terrorizing the people of Flintville, Tennessee. The monster would come out of the forest and begin to slaughter people's livestock, abduct children, and even go after and attack people's vehicles. The first sighting was in April 1976 when a woman decided to call the cops and report that a 7 to 8 feet tall hairy creature had come out of the forest, came straight to her car, pulled the radio antennas off of them, and then proceeded to jump on top of the roof of her car. This story would kickstart the legend of the Flintville Monster, and many people would come out to report their own experiences with this creature. At number 7 spot with the Chickamauga Battlefield. The second bloodiest battle in the Civil War happened in southeastern Tennessee. This battle started in September 1863, and by the end of it, there were more than 34,000 lives lost, and many of the injured Union soldiers were left on the field for weeks, only to be buried into unmarked graves by their enemies. The sight of restless souls is why many believe that they still linger on the battlefield awaiting another potential conflict. One of the spirits found on the battlefield is the Lady in White. Many see her floating across the field, looking down as if she's looking for her husband who passed away during the war. However, the most infamous ghost found on the premises is known as Green Eyes. Locals believe that only his head was found in the rubble, and when they looked at it, they immediately noticed his piercing green eyes. Ever since they discovered his remains, he has appeared to people walking on the battlefield. This is either in the form of a headless man or a half man, half beast with sharp fangs and notorious green eyes. At number 6 spot, we have the Spearfinger. In the mountains of Tennessee, the Cherokee tribe told a story that haunted people for generations. It was said that a vampiric humanoid would walk along the nearby river and creeks looking for children. They would do this by shape-shifting themselves as an innocent, fragile old woman, and when the children began to trust them even a little bit, they would use their spear-like finger to stab directly through the child's heart. Yeah, I know, pretty brutal. From here, they would consume their favorite part of the body, which is the liver. But apart from their tendencies to hunt, they're also said to have the power to control any stone, no matter the size. This creature could fuse 2 stones together just by using its mind, and could even place large boulders above their victims with ease in order to completely squish them to death. Eventually, a great council was created to put an end to the Spearfinger. Once they trapped the creature, they noticed that arrows and knives did nothing to their stone skin. It wasn't until a bird landed on the creature's right hand when they began to notice that she carried her heart there. They began to direct their aim towards her hand, which eventually ended up killing it, ending the curse of Spearfinger for good. In the hump for our list, we have the Tennessee State Prison. Built in 1898, this castle-looking prison was open for almost an entire century, and during its time, it housed many of America's most notorious criminals. It was a maximum security facility, but it was also notorious for their poor living conditions and their constant riots. For example, in 1902, a group of 17 prisoners would break out of their cells and start a riot within the jail, with one of the prisoners being murdered and 2 of the 17 prisoners actually escaping. Then in 1939, another jailbreak occurred with the prisoners setting fire to some areas of the prison, including the dining room, which ended up killing a few more of the workers and other prisoners. Then during the years 1975 to 1985, there were countless other riots and jailbreaks within the prison. People who have previously visited the old Tennessee State Prison have described what they think to be the sounds of cell bars clanking, spine-chilling cries, and footsteps that seem to echo throughout the halls when no one else is there. Eventually, the prison would be abandoned in 1992 due to its inhumane conditions and the fact that the building was completely unstable. At number 4 spot, we have the Shiloh National Park. With another Civil War battlefield on this list, we have the Shiloh National Park. This place is located in southwestern Tennessee, and many locals claim that the spirits of the soldiers still occupy the grounds. The Battle of Shiloh occurred in 1862, which had a total of 100,000 American soldiers with over 20,000 casualties. After the years following the war, many visitors to the national park claim that this place is one of the most haunted places in the state. This is because some say that when they're in an isolated part of the field, they hear war drums and the sounds of muskets firing in the distance. Some even claim that the nearby pond randomly turns red, symbolizing the blood of the men who passed away there. In the cemetery nearby, it holds as many as 3,500 Civil War soldiers, with over 2,000 of them being unnamed. After that many deaths in one certain place, it's really no surprise that there's something supernatural happening. At number 3 spot, with the Orum Theater. Built in 1928, the Orum Theater in Memphis, Tennessee has been the stage for performers and audiences to this day. As years went by, many watchers report small bits of supernatural activity, ranging from being tapped on the shoulders by unseeable forces to being whispered from underneath their seats. So as the reports started to pile up, psychics and other paranormal investigators decided to investigate the theater. After their findings, they concluded that there were at least 7 spirits that made the place their home. The most famous out of the 7 is a woman named Mary. Story goes that in 1921, there was another building standing on the grounds of the Orum Theater, which was named the Grand Opera House. Here, 12-year-old Mary passed away right in front of the house after being caught in a hit-and-run accident. Now she is spotted by the majority of visitors, notorious for wearing old-fashioned clothing and dancing around the theater when someone is performing. At number 2 spot, with the ghostly bride of Rotherwood Mansion. Frederick Ross, the town's founder, is also the owner of the Rotherford Mansion in Kingsport. Ever since moving into the mansion, his daughter Rowena lived a very miserable life, losing both her first husband to yellow fever and then her second husband on the day of their wedding. She eventually had a daughter after her 3rd marriage, but as time went by, her daughter too would pass away. Rowena was overpowered by her sadness and ultimately committed suicide. It is thought that she now haunts the estate. The ghost is now known as the Ghost Bride because it's thought to wear all white clothing walking around the grounds. At number 1 spot, with the Bell Witch Cave. This one literally has the word witch in its name, so you know there's probably nothing good about it. According to the legend of the Bell Witch, in 1804, a farmer named John Bell moved his wife and his kids to a farm along the Red River in northern Robertson County. The property also included a cave, which became known as the Bell Witch Cave, believed to be haunted by the spirit of a witch named Kate Batts. This woman felt she was cheated by the Bells in the land purchase and ever since carried a strong dislike for the Bell family. Then when John Bell passed away under suspicious circumstances, people believed it to be the witch who was supposedly hiding in that very cave.
Starting off this countdown at number 10, the Stanley Hotel. One of the most famous haunts of Colorado is the Stanley Hotel. The Stanley, which served as the basis for Stephen King's The Shining, is more than a century old and is home to countless ghost sightings and unexplainable events. Multiple witnesses have seen a face peering out of the window of room 407 when it wasn't occupied. One witness staying in the room reported that a light kept turning off and on. Allegedly, the guests acknowledged the ghost, assured him that they'd only be staying 2 days, and asked him to keep the light on. The spirit left the light alone after that, but proceeded to spend the rest of the night noisily playing around with the elevator just outside the door. Rooms 217, 401, and 418 have unusually high reports of paranormal activity. Cleaning crews tell of strange noises and seeing impressions on the bed when the rooms were empty. Guests in room 418 report that the sounds of children playing in the hall, but when those reports came in, there were no children checked into the hotel. Number 9, the Black Forest Haunting. In the early 1990s, Steve Lee moved his family into a log cabin home in the Black Forest region of northern Colorado. They rented it for a year before purchasing it, but once the land was theirs, things started getting weird. Initially, lights and electronic devices kept turning off and on, and eerie noises sometimes filled the air. This was followed by a strange odor that wafted through the cabin that burned the family's throats and eyes. Thinking these happenings were the work of pranksters, the Lee family installed motion detectors and cameras. However, the motion detectors would go off when nothing seemed to be happening on the cameras. Steve Lee added more cameras capturing more unexplainable phenomenon like orbs, beams of light, and sometimes ghostly forms with faces. The Lees could no longer pretend the cameras were the problem, and they contacted the show Sightings to document what became one of the most famous hauntings in America. The Sightings crew experienced and captured quite a bit of phenomena themselves. Cameras were knocked off tripods, one of their producers experienced an attempted possession, and a medium working with them determined there were multiple spirits in the house and a rift in space and time on the property. Number 8, the Vampire's Grave. European lore is rich in tales of vampires, yet one of those creatures may have found themselves in a small town in Colorado. Theodore Glava was a Transylvanian immigrant who moved to Colorado and became a coal miner. Legend says the man was tall and pale with a dark coat and long fingernails. In 1918, he passed away of the flu and was buried in the local cemetery, where some say they have seen his figure lurking at night. Some say that the tree guarding Glava's grave grew from the stake that was hammered into his heart post-mortem. Number 7. Butch Cassidy's lost gold. Butch Cassidy was one of the most infamous outlaws in Wild West history, and his life allegedly ended in a shootout in 1908, but it said he left behind mementos of his acclaimed career. According to the rumors, Cassidy reportedly stashed thousands of dollars worth of gold in a hideout in an unassuming Irish canyon. If this is true, the gold may still be there to this day. Should you ever visit the Irish Canyon, keep a careful eye out and you may be the one to discover Cassidy's hidden treasure. Number 6. Route 666. The infamous Route 666, nicknamed the Devil's Highway, runs through Colorado. It was renumbered as Route 491 in 2003 in hopes of dispelling the fear surrounding the demonic numbers. However, changing the numbers didn't take away the unexplainable phenomena that occurred, and is still occurring on this cursed road. When it was still known as Route 666, this stretch of highway had an unusually high accident rate. People driving along the Devil's Highway have reported creepy incidences, such as a black Phantom sedan that follows dangerously close no matter how high the speed. Many have pulled over only to realize that there's no car behind them. There are also tales of a pack of hellhounds that terrorize innocent travelers. The beasts somehow manage to keep up with the vehicle regardless of how fast or recklessly the driver maneuvers the car. Many believe these hellhounds are responsible for shredding tires and causing terrible wrecks. Some have even claimed that the beasts are capable of jumping into the windows and mauling people. Halfway. Number 5. The Riverdale Road. Riverdale Road runs through Thornton and is lined with creepy cottonwood trees, where you can allegedly see hanging bodies by the light of the full moon. A Camaro with no driver can also be spotted winding down this stretch of road. Riverdale Road also has its own Lady in White legend. Reportedly, visitors have seen this strange woman in their rearview mirror. Locals believe that she is a ghost who is looking for the spirits of her deceased children. Number 4. The Gates of Hell. According to local legend, the Gates of Hell lies near Riverdale Road in Thornton. Rumor has it that the stretch of road leads to rusted iron gates that open to a place of satanic worship and human sacrifices. Behind these gates also rest the charred ruins of an old mansion that leads directly to hell, people say. The mansion was built by David Woolpett during the gold rush. Over the years, the structure was used as a brothel, cowboy saloon, and a hippie commune before it was burned down in 1975. It's said that a man living in the mansion took his family's lives before setting the home on fire. This dark story has led people to believe that the grounds of the mansion are portals to the underworld. Number 3. The Hotel Colorado. The guests of the Hotel Colorado are often awoken in the night by strange sounds and flickering lights. Some are plagued by sightings of a little girl wearing a Victorian-era dress, while others recount how their personal items were moved around or missing. Both bell tower suites are reportedly haunted, and the elevator seems to have a mind of its own at times. Stories tell of a female presence that has a habit of watching male guests as they sleep. The screams of a woman can also often be heard throughout the hotel, believed to belong to a deceased chambermaid. According to the lore, she was involved in a love triangle which ended with one of her lovers taking her life in one of the guest rooms. And her former room has been turned into a storage space because the paranormal activity within the room was said to be too intense to remain open to the public. Number 2. The Ridge Home Asylum. Every state has an abandoned asylum story, and this is Colorado's. Ridge Home admitted its first patient in 1912, and from there began a history full of controversy. Many of the home's residences were admitted despite still being mentally capable, but over time their mental states declined due to their confinement. Rumors that patients were unnecessarily medicated arose, and over time parts of the building closed due to unsafe living conditions. Finally, in 1992, the doors of Ridge Home Asylum closed for good, but that doesn't change the fact that the legend that some patients were mistreated there and passed away still remains to haunt people who try to explore the abandoned building. Now coming in at number 1, Hatchet Lady of Red Rocks. Red Rocks is a staple of Colorado and is a big deal for people who live there. But what if I told you it's home to some eerie and paranormal tales? Would you still want to see your favorite band play there, even when there's something lurking in the shadows watching your every move? Yeah, probably not. One of the more popular and well-known legends surrounding Red Rocks is that of the Hatchet Lady. She wasn't always known as the Hatchet Lady though. In fact, many stories say that this woman, old Mrs. Johnson, would pull a coat over her head and carry around a hatchet in order to ward off her daughter's suitors. Apparently, she wasn't a fan of young love. She of course has tales that make her into a headless ghost, that scare off couples who are getting a little too intimate in the shadows. Other myths believe that this Hatchet Lady was a homeless woman who lived in the area, like in a nearby cave in the 1950s, and instead of going after young lovers, she'd go after children. Any young kids who ended up a little too close for their liking would be executed, and she'd hide their bodies and severed limbs around the grounds.
At a number 10 spot, we have the Seven Sisters Road. Located in southeast Nebraska, just outside of Nebraska City, is a road that locals call Seven Sisters Road. And if you're trying to find this on a map, it will be named L Street. But I wouldn't recommend taking a road trip down this place. Legend goes that a man had an argument with his parents and his 7 sisters. It got to a point when his whole family hated him and he looked to seek revenge. So one day he waited in the woods outside of his home and waited for his parents to leave. After he forced or baited his sisters one by one outside of the house, he would end up hanging each and every single one of them where this road is situated today. Then eventually a road would be built on this path of the trees, causing them to be shut down. Ever since the construction of the road, this road is said to be haunted by the 7 sisters who were executed. Many who have driven through the area report having problems with their cars stalling, headlights mysteriously dimming, speedometers freezing, and windows that roll up and down seemingly on their own. At our number 9 spot, we have Alliance Theater. On the east side of Nebraska is one of the most iconic buildings in the state, and that is the Alliance Theater. This was built back in 1903, starting off as a hotel, but in 1938, it was then rebranded into Imperial Theater until it switched to the name Alliance. It would host many different performing arts, but it said a few performers passed away inside of the theater. Some were caused by accidents, such as an actress named Mary who passed away after a piece of lighting equipment fell on her. Now, over the years over its existence, many workers at the theater have reported their own ghostly tales. Some include whispers as if someone's right behind them and shadow figures walking around, and some are even seen performing. Even in 2002, the owner Gerald Bullard had said to reporters that, quote, "If the theater is actually haunted, then the ghosts are very friendly." It still remains open to this day, and many visitors claim to see the spirit of Mary. At our number 8 spot, we have Blackbird Hill. North of Decatur, Nebraska is a hill overlooking the Missouri River, and this hill is said to be infested with spirits. One notorious spirit that most visitors spot is of a young lady who could be screaming near the cliff. Legend goes that in 1840, a young couple in the area fell in love. This relationship carried both of them through school, but soon after they were done, the boy decided to travel abroad. His initial plan was to travel the world, then come back and marry the girl. But after a few months, the man never ended up returning back home. Months turned into years, and eventually the devastated girl gave up and married another man. The new couple then decided to move to a small cabin to what is now Blackbird Hill. And this is when the girl spotted her ex-fiance walking up to the cabin. She was shocked and then confessed a love for the man and went back home to tell her new fiance that she wanted to leave him and have a divorce. The new fiance got very angry and in a rage took her to the nearby cliff and proceeded to jump off together. The ex-fiance arrived, but just too late, only to hear the agonizing scream of his former wife. This occurred on October 17th, and many visitors gather up in this day because it said that you can still hear her screams down the cliff. At our number 7 spot, we have the Poison Girl at Centennial Hall. Built in 1897 in Valentine, Nebraska, is the historic Centennial Hall. It functions now as a 12-room museum, but before it was originally built to be a high school for the kids in the area. Then in 1947, a young female student was murdered inside of the school. She passed away after playing on her clarinet. This caused everyone to suspect that someone had intentionally poisoned her clarinet root. Ever since the incident, the school is haunted by this little girl. The teachers will report her in their classrooms after school times, and this would accompany the feeling of dread. Other visitors and students report to hear her clarinet being played in a very ominous way. Now as a museum, visitors still report this little girl roaming the halls. She is said to have tugged on people's clothing as well as placing her clarinet on many of the artifacts inside of the museum in hopes that someone will play it and be poisoned like she was. At number 6 spot, we have Radioactive Hornets. Although this theory is debunked, it was a crazy one when it was first released in the media because many people didn't know how radiation worked and whatever they said about it would just scare you. Story goes that after the nuclear disasters following World War II in the 1940s, Japan's Fukushima nuclear plant created a giant mutant killer hornet due to their exposure to radiation. The hornets were said to have grown 4 times their size and were reproducing exponentially. Then one year in Nebraska, it was reported that many people were passing away with stings and swelling on their bodies, which led many people to place a blame on radioactive hornet. Again, this is just a myth and no radiation didn't cause overgrown killer hornets, but still these large Japanese hornets do exist and they go by the name of Asian giant hornet. At a number 5 spot, we have the Bailey House Museum. This red brick house in Brownsville was built just after the Civil War by Unison officer Captain Benson M. Bailey. He alongside his wife lived in this house for many years until financial depression hit, causing them to move away. This relocation would eventually place them in a more dangerous area, leading to their eventual murders. Their murders were never solved, but many claim that it was the fault of a jealous neighbor who poisoned the two in order to get their property. Whatever happened, what is known is that the spirit of Captain Benson Bailey is said to lurk the home to this day. He is said to slam doors open and shut in the house in order to display his dominance, and when he's agitated, he will swing them back and forth until you just stop doing whatever it is that he doesn't like. Others have reported seeing the man himself walking the halls and even standing up against the doors motionlessly. At a number 4 spot, we have Hummel Park. Despite being a beautiful park in appearance, there is a much darker story to it that makes you think twice before stepping foot here. This area is said to be the place where many lynchings, hangings, and satanic rituals were performed, and some believe they are happening to this day deep within the woods of the park. A stairway in the park has been called the stairs to hell because it is reported that it's impossible to count the same number of steps ascending the stairs as it is descending the stairs. Other than the fact that this place is covered in satanic graffiti, this place is just one of those places you shouldn't test out. You know? Just in case. At a number 3 spot, we have Walgren Lake Monster. Just west of Nebraska is the Walgren Lake, and this body of water is said to hold a 40 to 100 feet beast. Witnesses have said it looks like an alligator that has 2 front legs and a flipper on its back. Others have said it has a serpentine body, which closely resembles the Loch Ness Monster. But I swear, everyone everywhere believes they have the Loch Ness Monster in their area, or is that just me? It's said that you'll know this monster is near is that when you smell a hard stench of rotting flesh. The first written record of this monster is from a 1922 issue of the Haysprings News. The following year, a local man named J.A. Johnson described the monster in an interview with the Omaha World Herald. According to the report, Johnson and his 2 friends were camping on the banks of the lake when they noticed a creature about 60 feet away. The men claimed that as soon as the beast saw them, it belted out a huge roar, whipped around, and plunged beneath the muddy lake water. At a number 2 spot, we have the Ball Cemetery. Ball Cemetery is a cemetery in Springfield, Nebraska that was first used during the 19th century by pioneers. There is only one way in and one way out, and trespassers have been greeted by a caretaker with a shotgun who lives nearby. But instead of the caretaker keeping people out of his cemetery, it's more like he's trying to stop them from entering a place that is cursed. For decades, it has been said that this dark and lonely plot of land in the middle of nowhere is haunted by mysterious entities that defy rational explanation. Tall male apparitions sometimes attack nighttime visitors, and a female ghost laughs, speaks, and tugs on people's clothing. Photographs taken here often contain anomalies which believers swear are evidence of ghostly presences. All the way at a number 1 spot, we have the Hatchet House. In the town of Portal, there is a 1-room schoolhouse that held a very gruesome murder. Legend says that back in the early 1900s, a teacher snapped at her students after they were misbehaving for hours. She had already been having problems back at home as well, so this was her final straw. Except this would be a little bit too brutal for our liking. She would then proceed to lock the door to the classroom and pull out a rusty hatchet from underneath her desk.